Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Unit 5 discussion. We're going to be talking about different types of assembly and packaging in sterile processing. So today's Friday. Hopefully you guys have had a good week. All right, so our objectives for this unit are going to be talking about like the different types of material that you would use for the sterilization process, how those can be wrapped efficiently and effectively, and making sure you have the right material for the sterilization process. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Here are your assignments that will be due on Sunday. Your first discussion post, like always, is due on Wednesday. Be sure to respond to 2 of your peers for full credit. Some of you, I think, are still forgetting to go back and do that. So don't get those easy points taken off. And also be sure to make sure you're citing your sources in APA format. If you need any help with that, please reach out to me, okay? But notice there are a lot of little quizzes this week. It's not a lot of huge points, but if you miss some of these, it'll definitely add up. So make sure you go through the modules and make sure you've got all of those done. All right, so let's start off by asking a question. How do instruments go from decontamination to being used in the operating room? Because we've talked about the decontamination process and the 3 sinks, cleaning off all the bioburden using the enzymatic cleaners. We've done all that. So how does it get to back to the operating room? So what's the next step here? So you have to, after putting it through decontam, you're going to put it through a washer decontaminator. And in our facility, that's actually what separates the decontamination room from clean side of the sterile processing department. So you put it through that washer decontaminator, and when it comes out the other side, it is safe or clean to handle. Okay, so that way, like this person here, they can use their bare hands. They don't have to use gloves to reassemble those trays. That way, they can ensure that all the pieces are there, and none of them have any broken pieces. They're going to inspect for safety, etc. So it's really mostly just separated by that washer decontaminator, and it'll come out clean on the other side. So how do we, once it's on the other side, well, let's talk about different guidelines so to repackage those types of things so it can get back to the OR. A lot of facilities will have some sort of either electronic or paper type of what we call a count sheet or a pick sheet, or a preference card. Sometimes they're called different things in different facilities, but in our facilities, it's typically printed off, and then you can go down the list and make sure everything that should be in that particular tray is in the tray. Sometimes it's done by like a barcode scanner. You scan it in as you place it in the tray or whatever it is. So there could be a lot of ways you could see that done. We typically also include a paper pick or count sheet in the tray, even after it's been, everything's been assembled in the tray. That way, when it goes up to surgery for the surge tech and the circulator, they have a baseline, a guideline as to what should be in that tray, and they can count it. So a lot of our procedures in surgery require us to count all the instruments, not just sponges or sharps, but oftentimes every piece of that instrument tray as well. So it's important to have that baseline as to what should be in there, which helps us with counting. So how do they know what the tray requirements are? How does it even become a pick sheet would be a good question. That's usually going to be either a sterile processing person's job in communication with the OR staff, or it might be like a team leader who creates those from the OR, and they'll be, communicating with their surgeon. A lot of trays are specific to certain surgeons. They like their own things. They like, this particular pair of scissors or that forcep, and it goes in their tray. A lot of places do it that way. A lot of times they'll also just have like your basic laparotomy tray, or just basic trays for those particular types of surgeries. You'd have your hemostats, Kelly's, Alice, Babcock, Hooker, you'd have all those basic things for those types of procedures. And then sometimes maybe special things are open separate for certain surgeons. So that's a possibility too. So they make up those lists that can be printed off for you to pick the correct case. And then another important guideline here, all items are dried prior to sterilization. So it goes through the washer decontam, and then it has to be dried prior to repackaging and putting it into the sterilizer. So remember, the washer decontaminator does not sterilize items. It's only making it clean to handle to reprocess. So the exception of making sure things are dry are lumens. Remember, things with a hole like a Fraser tip suction or Yankauer, type of tube, so to speak. You want to leave a little bit of water in that lumen, especially for steam. That way, the steam penetrates the entire tubing. Also, while you're repackaging or doing this pack preparation, you're going to inspect for several things. You want to make sure that it's clean, that back in decontam they got all the pieces of bone or blood off, whatever, making sure nothing got missed. You want to make sure that it is functional. If you see that these forceps, the teeth of them don't line up, like they got bent or something, don't put them back in the tray, because it's going to go up to the OR for the surgeon to use and it's not going to work. And then the surgeon's probably going to get mad. Okay. It'll delay the surgery. You have to get a new one. It could even cause patient tissue damage, so you don't want to do that. Make sure there is no damage to the instrument. Sometimes, we use heavier equipment. Maybe a, a drill came in contact with an instrument and maybe put a dent in it or something like that. It could cause there to be like a sharp edge or something. So you want to make sure there's no damage and that all parts are present. Sometimes you'll have to reference your IFUs to make sure if it's a multi-part thing, make sure all the parts are there if you're not familiar with what that particular item is. So instrument inspection is super important because, it's going to go back up to the OR for that surgeon to use on that patient. If it's not all there or it's not working properly, it can definitely cause a delay or even potentially patient injury. Okay. So the tray itself, there are some guidelines with the actual tray. Different sterilizers may require different trays. So again, we always say this, reference your IFUs to make sure you have the correct tray for that sterilizer. It's also important not to overcrowd the trays because the sterilant, whatever sterilant you're using, may not penetrate, all the spaces in between if it's too tight. And then you want to keep the trays under 25 pounds. It's typically max. It's also important for the person that has to lift the trays. You want to be nice to your back, especially as you get older. And you want to protect instruments from damage. So basically, if you have a tray that has some heavier instruments and maybe some more delicate instruments in the same type of tray, you want to package that in a way that you're not going to damage the delicate instruments. You would put delicate on top, heavier on bottom. Anything that is clamped, like your hemostats, Kellys, whatever, always have to be unclamped during the sterilization process. If they are clamped and they go through the sterilizer, that sterilant, whatever it is, cannot get in between where the ratchet is. It can't get in between those areas. So if then that hinged instrument became unclamped, later, after sterilization, you've contaminated the entire case, essentially. Okay, and also remember fan. This will help you with this guideline here. Keep it functional, accurate, and neat. That could be probably applied to a lot of things. Okay, fan. So let's talk about chemical indicators. We're talking about our tray of instruments. You've got your tray, you've got them neat, functional, right? All laid out in there. You also have to make sure that you include a chemical indicator in every item that is being sterilized. Every tray, every peel pack, everything has to have a chemical indicator. Okay, here's a picture of some of them, and they can vary depending on what your facility uses. I've seen some that are green, black and white are pretty common. But what this is, if you look at this pass versus fail, as it goes through the sterilizer and it comes out at the end, you want to make sure that this little black mark got put into the accept part of this strip. We call it a chemical strip or an indicator. If that black doesn't make it into the accept part, the load failed. So whatever that item was, if it was a whole load, has to be rerun. You cannot use, and surge techs will not use a pack or a tray that does not have a chemical indicator, or if the indicator has failed. So a lot of trays will have an indicator that looks different than this on the outside of the tray. That way you would know before you opened it whether it was accepted or rejected. You'll also have one on the inside of the tray. You may even have multiple if it's a multiple layer tray. So the surge tech will always be looking for these things to make sure that they're there and that they are what we call good. It's a good indicator if it passed. So if it didn't, it's going to get sent back down and to be reprocessed. Okay, so it's important to remember with these indicators that all this means is that it went through the sterilization process, and either those sterilization parameters were met or they weren't. It does not necessarily indicate that that particular item or tray is sterile. The only way to do that is to run that biological indicator. It's the only way to ensure sterility. All right, let's talk about the different types of packaging material. So it's not always just an instrument tray. Sometimes, it's a peel pack or a fabric that's being wrapped. So we can use woven fabrics for certain things. You need to know that it's going to be like 140 thread count type of muslin, which is a particular type, and it's 2-ply. And you'll see this in a video that I have posted here in a few. With the rigid containers, we've kind of talked about, but it has the hard outer shell. We sometimes call it a casket, with inside an inner, typically metal basket that will hold your instruments. So the surge tech will, after the circulator takes the lid off, will take the inner basket of instruments out and put on their table. Okay, and then you have peel packs. Notice there's a couple options here. You could do the paper plastic combo, which is acceptable for steam or ETO, ethylene oxide, or you could have a Tyvek type of plastic. So with this paper plastic, it says sterilant cannot enter through the plastic side. So when we talked about positioning in that sterilizer load, they have to be like upright on their side, not laying like down or flat. So that way the sterilant can get through the paper side. And then the Tyvek is for Sterit or an ozone type of sterilizer. So here is a step-by-step guide of wrapping techniques using what's called the envelope fold. Now, some people can think this way, like in a sequential order. They like to see it step-by-step of how to do something, like reading a direction or directional manual or something like that. Not everybody processes information that way, I guess you could say. And I'm one of those people. I can read it, but it's not going to truly click for me until I see it. So if you wanted to maybe take the time to memorize these steps, you can. But I also have included a video on how to do it. I think to me, and I think a lot of people, it's easier to see it done, and then you'll be able to do it too. So here's a good video on an envelope fold method. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a good idea of what I was talking about with the muslin being dual layer, you could say, and how the envelope fold works. So that's something you're going to do all the time as a sterile processing tech. The next one I want to show you is actually very similar, but it's a different technique. I could get it to go. Using a slightly different style of wrapper. This is called the Smart Fold, and you'll see it does make it easier for the person wrapping it and for opening, because it's got these special little tabs built in. So see if you notice the difference there.
So how does SmartFold work? Let's look at it once again, step by step. Select the correct size and grade of SmartFold for your tray. SmartFold comes in a range of sizes. Once you've laid out the wrap with the blue area away from you, position the tray for wrapping. Place the front edge of the tray at the reference line, not at the edge of the white area. Both sides of the tray should fall within the blue reinforcement zones. If both sides do not fit within the blue reinforcement area, select a larger or smaller size of SmartFold. Begin folding as you normally would, bringing the wrap up and over the tray so that the front side of the tray is covered all the way to the work surface. Hold the corner lightly and tuck and fold the side in as usual. Now pull the side tab up and over the top of the tray and secure it with a positioning strip. The strip will keep the tab in place while you complete wrapping. Repeat the process from the other side, again patting the side tab into place on top of the tray. Bring the outer ends of the flaps together, like this, or overlapping. SmartFold's ergonomic design features keep the fabric in place without elbows or awkward bending and twisting. Now, tucking the front corners slightly, reach over and pull the blue section up across the top of the tray. Note that the top section is less bulky for a nice, neat closure while still providing a full 3 layers of protection to the tray. Tuck the front and under, neaten the edges, and tape with indicator tape as usual. Now process your SmartFold package for sterilization, exactly as you would with one step. SmartFold has been approved for both pre-vac steam and EO processing. Finally, transport and store trays wrapped with KimGuard SmartFold, just as you do packages wrapped with KimGuard and KimGuard One-Step Wrap. Halyard Health offers a knowledge network education unit on tray handling through our Excellence in Sterile Processing series.
Hopefully you got to see, the difference between the two. Really, the Smart Fold is easier to use once you get doing it. Your facility will use one of those two for an envelope fold, guarantee you. So a lot of facilities now are going to that Smart Fold because it is more ergonomically designed. You don't have to use your elbows. It's a little bit easier on the person doing
Talk to your Halyard rep if you would like to receive.
Move on to the next there. So the next one I want to show you, we talked about, the Smart Fold, but this one is a little bit more specific to identifying wrap tears and how to handle these once they've been completely wrapped. How do you keep them on the shelf? How do you take them off the shelf? Those are all very important things because you don't want to undo everything you've just done by not storing it properly. So let's watch this one.
Welcome to the Kimberly-Clark Healthcare Knowledge Network presentation entitled Sterilization Wrap, Tear Identification and Handling Technique. This is one of our Excellence in Sterile Processing programs that addresses critical issues in healthcare. At the end of this continuing education program, you should be able to list 3 factors that can compromise the sterility of a wrapped package, identify the types of tears that can occur in wrapped packages, describe the possible causes for these tears, and discuss proper tray handling technique that will assist in preventing these tears. After sterilization, factors that can compromise the sterility of a wrap package are moisture, soil, and physical damage. Let's review these factors. After the sterilization process, packages may become moist from causes that include touching sterilized packages before they are cooled, placing the package on a wet or damp surface, carrying the package tucked tightly under the arm where it can come into contact with the warm, wet armpit, or from handling the package with wet or sweaty hands. Sterile items that become wet are considered contaminated because moisture brings with it microorganisms from the air and surfaces. A second factor that can compromise the sterility of a package is soil, such as dirt, dust, and debris. This soiling may result from causes that include incorrect or excessive handling or from unclean storage facilities. A third factor is physical damage to the package. This can be caused by dropping the package on the floor or another hard surface, through rough handling and manipulation of the package, such as forcing it into a tight storage space, or by stacking heavy packages. Packages that are wet, soiled, torn, or dropped onto hard surfaces should be considered contaminated and unsafe for use. If there is any doubt about the sterility of the item, it must be totally reprocessed before it can be used safely. For the purpose of this program, we will focus on the third factor that can compromise the sterility of a wrap package: physical damage. Improper handling is a major cause of physical damage and contamination of sterile packages. One cause of improper handling and stress on the sterilization wrap is heavily weighted trays. For instance, as surgical procedures become more complex, so do the instruments and trays that support them. That often means that the weight of the trays has increased, making it more difficult for sterilization wrap to withstand the greater pressures of heavier instrument sets, especially when handled and moved improperly. Other examples of improper handling include manipulating wrap packages with long fingernails that can rupture the package material, inappropriate storage resulting in crushed, bent, or compressed packages, and dropping packages. Dropped packages should be considered contaminated even if no damage is apparent, since the jarring and compression on landing can force dust and airborne microorganisms into the package. The consequence of physical damage is often a tear or ruptured seals that could result in contamination of the tray contents. Physical damage will most typically occur along the bottom tray edges and at the corners. The following is a review of wrap tears. There are three types of wrap tears: cuts, holes, and abrasions. Several types of cuts may occur. A knife cut is almost always straight. The edges are clean rather than frayed and can easily be pulled together to make the wrap appear intact. A knife cut generally occurs on the top few sheets of the first bundle of sterilization wrap when a knife is used to open their packing box. At first glance, a pressure cut may look like a knife cut, but upon closer examination, one can see that the fibers around the edges of the cut have been welded or stuck together. The edge of the cut may feel hard to the touch. Pressure cuts may be seen at the perimeter or outline of the bottom of the instrument tray, or at the top of the instrument tray if trays are stacked on top of one another. Pressure cuts can be caused when all three of the following factors are present. The wrap is sandwiched between two hard surfaces, excessive pressure is applied, and the tray is pulled or dragged across a smooth surface. Another type of cut is a snag cut. The edges of a snag cut show loose fibers hanging from the edge of the cut, and/or there are individual fibers spanning the width of the cut. The edges of a snag cut are not hard as with pressure cuts. In larger snag cuts, the shape of the cut usually resembles a triangle, with the point of the triangle being where the snag began. Snag cuts are generally due to the tray being pulled or dragged across a rough surface, such as is often found in an older, well-used sterilizer cart. If the tray is very loosely wrapped, snag cuts may occur along the edges of the wrapped instrument tray. They can also occur on other areas of the tray where the wrap is too loose and can be caught by rough surfaces, corners, or edges of objects. Holes are yet another type of wrap tear. A pressure hole may appear as a tiny opening less than 2 millimeters in length where the fibers around the edge of the hole have been welded or stuck together. They are usually found along the perimeter of the instrument tray. This type of hole is caused when the wrap is sandwiched between two hard surfaces, such as when heavy trays are stacked on top of each other. Or a pressure hole may occur when excessive and/or sudden pressure is applied. An example would be when a package is dropped on a hard surface. Another type of hole is the snag hole. This hole is triangular in shape with loose fibers hanging from the edges. A snag hole may result from the wrap getting caught on something such as a rough surface or a burr on a sterilizer cart. A puncture hole is characterized by frayed or loose fibers attached to the edges of the hole. Typically, this type of hole will not have hard or welded edges. The most probable cause for a puncture hole is an instrument in the tray becoming loose and puncturing the wrap from the inside. If tip protectors are used and instruments are anchored appropriately within the tray, this type of hole can be prevented. The tiniest of holes is the pinhole. This is a very small hole that may be the result of physical damage in which a very small object pierces both layers of a wrap tray. Occasionally, a pinhole may be due to a manufacturing defect and can be seen on one of the sheets of wrap. If the pinhole is visible through both sheets of a wrap package, it is probably due to physical damage and not a manufacturing defect. Another type of hole is a melted hole. This is a large, round, or irregular hole with hard welded edges. A melted hole may be the result of the wrap coming in contact with a heat source, such as a hot instrument in a tray that hasn't been allowed to cool sufficiently, or contact with a light bulb in a storage area. Abrasions are another category of wrap tear. An abrasion appears as a fuzzy surface, sometimes dirty or discolored. It can occur when a wrap tray is repetitively pulled over a hard surface. Trays that are repeatedly handled prior to use often display abrasion. An abrasion hole is the result of extreme abrasion with holes in one or both layers of the wrap. The possible causes are the same as for general abrasion, except that the abrasion was repeated often enough to finally result in a hole. Proper tray handling technique is essential for preventing damage to the packaging and compromised sterility. Education and training programs should include information on proper tray handling technique. Continuing education should be provided at regular intervals to review and update worker knowledge and skills and to maintain their competency.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. That gives you the idea of what we're talking about, making sure that, you've gone through the whole process of cleaning, decontaminating, repackaging. It's just as important to make sure you understand how to put it on the shelf, how to store it, how to take it off the shelf, because you went through all that effort to make sure it was sterilized. You want to keep it that way so it can be used. Otherwise it's just going to have to be done all over again, which is wasteful. And one of your discussion posts, is about, greening the sterile processing department. A lot of waste happens in the OR and in sterile processing that could be very easily preventable in something like this. So just wanted to point that out to you, just to be aware of how you should be handling these types of things.
All orientation on the job and in-service training.
Next one here. So reach out to me if you have any questions. We're almost towards the end of our quarter. You need to be getting those assignments in. You can still submit late work. Yes, I've gotten a lot of emails about that. So get those things in so your grade can be updated, especially things like your decontamination video or your research papers. Those things count for a bigger portion of your grade and will drop your grade significantly if you do not turn those in. So make sure you're getting that stuff in. I do have office hours on Tuesday. If that doesn't work for you, reach out. Maybe we could, figure something out, or just send me an email with a question. I'll get back to you, okay? All right, have a great week.